Hey everyone, welcome back to the Fantasy Pros Football Podcast for Championship Week Start-Sit Show. I'm Bobby Sylvester with Mike Tagliere. As always, Tags, how's it going, man?
It's going good. I can't believe it's week 16. I can't believe it's the fantasy championship, and it's weird. I thought about this earlier today, and I was like, man, I'm excited that the regular season's coming to an end, but I'm sad I'm going to be missing football. But football's a year-round thing now, where it's like we're not going to go away. I mean, we're still going to be doing podcasts for you guys, not as much as we are now, but we're going to be talking about the NFL draft. Things are taking place in the off season, so we're still going to keep you guys informed.
Yeah. Tags, I gotta say, I am bummed. Aaron Rodgers is on the IR now, and my opponent picked up not one, but the top 4 quarterbacks available because he had Fab left. So I get to start Blake Bortles now. Oh man, that sucks. He used the strategy, and it's gonna be close.
So wait, you have Blake Bortles to use?
Well, now I have Blake Bortles to use, yeah, but I mean, I wanted to pick up like Matthew Stafford, man.
Oh, I'm totally on board.
Nick Foles.
I'm on board with Blake Bortles this week, man. I'm telling you right now, I myself was having an internal debate whether or not I would start Blake Bortles or Aaron Rodgers in one league, and I'm not kidding when I tell you I was leaning towards Blake Bortles because it just feels like it's going to be a safer play than Rodgers was going to be at home. That game's on Saturday night. It's going to be in the single-digit temperatures and against the Minnesota Vikings.
Against the Vikings?
Yeah, so it wasn't a great matchup. So honestly, this may be a blessing in disguise for you, Bobby.
Yeah, you might be right. I don't know. And I get to say I won a championship with Blake Bortles, so assuming I win, and I'm going to win. So I'm dealing with a cold, if you all can't tell. My voice is a lot different today. I never use an alarm clock because my boys just wake me up every morning and plenty of time for work. Today, my 3-year-old was really thoughtful. I guess you can call it thoughtful. He decided to, quote unquote, just let daddy sleep so he would feel better. He toasted 2 pieces of bread for himself and his brother, used a knife to butter it, poured cinnamon all over it, like just covered in cinnamon, microwaved some frozen peas on a plate, then peeled 2 bananas. I don't know if I should be horrified, Tags, or just amazed, but that's how I started my day.
I'm scared, man. Like, because you're telling, you told me earlier that you're sick. My wife, it was her birthday yesterday. Last night at 8 o'clock, all of a sudden she was hit with these crazy symptoms where she actually called into work today, and like she literally slept for like 16 straight hours. I didn't think that was possible, but she's just dead. So I hope this sickness doesn't catch up just in time for when the season ends, when of course, we're supposed to enjoy some time with our friends and family.
Yeah, man. You're going to get sick for sure. It's happening.
Oh, boy. I can't take any more sickness.
So, Tags, before we move on, and we've got a really comprehensive show planned, we have another DraftKings contest for you all at fantasypros.com/DraftKings. Here's the details, okay? First place wins a lifetime Fantasy Pro subscription and $1,000. Half of all entries are going to win prizes, and the entry fee is just $1. And you get to create a lineup of 8 players in our pick'em type contest. So for player 1, you get 8 choices in the same tier and have to pick one, and so on. I love this format, and I'm going to try to beat you all. So if you want to crack at a lifetime subscription to Fantasy Pros and $1,000, you can enter for $1 at fantasypros.com/DraftKings.
I love it. I love this, Bobby, because I'll tell you what, last week there were a lot of people telling me that I was crazy for recommending Mike Evans, and it worked out, obviously, in the favor of those who listen to me. Now, am I wrong at times? Absolutely, but I get people all the time who look at things in retrospect and say, how could you have had this guy this low or this high? This is your chance to compete against us, because Bobby and I are both going to be taking part in this competition, and again, it's tiers where you're selecting from a certain amount of players, where it's almost like rankings. So join the fun. It's only $1 and a chance to win a lifetime subscription. Man, that's awesome.
Tags, I saw somebody blasting Sean Corner on Twitter. He said, I'm not ever listening to that guy again. I can't believe he's #1 in the expert accuracy rankings. He got my start-sit wrong 2 weeks in a row. I'm never trusting him again. And it's like, dude, do you realize, like, if we could get 100%, we would not be doing this. We would be making bonkers money doing fantasy football, right? I mean, we're better than the public consensus. We really are. Like, a start-sit decision for the public consensus is 50 to 55% accuracy. A good expert, 65 to 70%. That's substantially better, but you still miss 30% of the time, like even Corner, right?
Yeah, if we had a crystal ball, this game wouldn't even be fun. I talked about this 1 week that I did the primer. I mentioned it, saying, all these crazy things that are happening, but would we have it any other way? I don't think we would, because if it was too predictive, then we wouldn't have any fun playing it. We wouldn't have any fun discussing it. There would be one opinion. Everybody would know what happened. That's why football is such a great game. It's so fun.
You're right, man. All right, so let's move on over to start of the week. And instead of just doing like straight up only start of the week, sit of the week, and then bold predictions at the end, we're going to go comprehensive. Like I mentioned, we're going to be talking about a lot of players who are on the fringe. I mean, as we'll start at quarterback, okay, Tags? I'm looking at the must starts. Cam Newton, Russell Wilson, Tom Brady, Big Ben, Drew Brees. I think Phillip Rivers and Matthew Stafford too. Then we've got like 8 or 9 guys that people are all wondering about. All the questions are about these guys. So Tags, tell me like your top 2 or 3 out of this group. We've got Case Keenum at Green Bay. Alex Smith face Miami. Nick Foles face Oakland. Dak Prescott face Seattle. Blake Bortles against, I laugh every time I say his name because it's just amazing what's happened this season. Blake Bortles at San Francisco. Jared Goff at Tennessee. Matt Ryan at New Orleans, which at the start of the season, I'll tell you what, everyone thought he would be the quarterback 1 this week, right? Matt Ryan at New Orleans. Kirk Cousins at Denver, Jameis Winston at Carolina, and Joe Flacco face Indianapolis. So who of those 3, which 3 of those do you like, Tags?
Well, I want to go back. I do not think that Ben Roethlisberger deserves to be in the conversation of guys that you must start this week. I want to make that clear.
Really?
I do, because I just got done I just got finished writing this game up for the week, and it's something that I've like revisited so many times this year, and it's like a gift that keeps on giving, and that is Ben Roethlisberger not playing well on the road. Everybody seems to think that Ben Roethlisberger it's going to be this is the week, Mike. This is the week he turns it around, because they can't give a reason why he struggles on the road. Nobody knows why, but he just does, okay? Over the last 4 seasons, he has played 29 games on the road. In those games, he averages 267 yards passing, 1.1 touchdowns, and 1 interception. His fantasy points are at 14.3 points per game. Now, to give you a comparison, because when you hear things on a podcast, it's difficult to kind of process what you're taking in. And as a comparison, in 2017, the quarterback who his numbers are most similar to when he's on the road is Jay Cutler this year. Jay Cutler has 18 touchdowns and 14 interceptions. Roethlisberger is on pace for 18 touchdowns, 16 interceptions on the road. That's what I'm saying is, like, when you've kind of taken all these numbers, you have to take things at, looking at the giant scope of things. And again, every single time that Roethlisberger plays on the road, everybody's like, this is the week, Mike. The matchup's just too good. And I understand Houston is that bad of a team where you want to start him. But we also can't forget he's going to be without Antonio Brown, which is the number 1 receiver. He's the go-to guy. He doesn't have that go-to guy in the offense anymore. So I think that Roethlisberger is still a low-end QB1, but I would rather start Blake Bortles over him this week.
I was just going to ask you that, and that is so incredible. I'll tell you why. And no one can figure out why he's not good in away games. I know exactly why. He's got a Lisa mattress in Pittsburgh that he doesn't bring to him to away games, right?
It might be the case. Who knows? I have no idea what it is. And that's the thing is, I think we had Chris Harris. I want to say he's the one who said it on our show earlier this year. He's like, if I can't give you a reason why he struggles on the road, then I don't think it's real. When we have a 4-year sample where he averages almost double the fantasy points that he does on the road or at home than he does on the road, there's a legit trend here. This is not a small sample size. This is over a span of 29 games. So again, there are positives in this matchup. I don't want to throw those away, but I also don't think that he's a must start. I would also consider starting Jared Goff over him. You mentioned him in those names.
Wow.
Jared Goff going against the Titans. The Titans have allowed 23 passing scores on the season, 4 touchdowns to 3 different quarterbacks. They have gotten better, allowing just 2 passing touchdowns in their last 4 games. And I know we've talked about that with the pass rush, and you've mentioned some of those stats, but we have to keep in mind that they've played against Jacoby Brissett, Tom Savage, Blaine Gabbert, and then Jimmy Garoppolo. Garoppolo, again, 2 of those...
The best quarterback ever?
Yeah, 2 of those quarterbacks did throw for 360 plus yards. So now that he has Robert Woods back, I think we can start Jared Goff as a low-end QB1, and it's just kind of gone overlooked in how good the Titans' run defense is that Todd Gurley's going to have difficulty getting things going on the ground. They're going to use him in the passing game. I just think that Jared Goff is a much safer option than Ben Roethlisberger. And honestly, I think he comes with just as much upside this week.
I've got to say, I was on the complete opposite side saying, like, who cares that he's bad on in away games? Like, there's no reason to that. You've talked me onto the other side just a little bit, okay? But listen to this, okay? His last 3 away games, QB 12 against Detroit, QB 10 against the Colts, QB8 against the Bengals. Houston's the worst defense of them all, and it's really not even close. Last 2 weeks, 96 pass attempts, 787 yards for 4 touchdowns. You're gonna sit that guy? Like, I've got Ben Roethlisberger as my number 4 quarterback. Jared Goff's number 14, man.
I think you're way too high on Ben, and I'm going to say that. And that's the thing. You talk through those numbers. All of those games were with Antonio Brown at his disposal, and taking away someone like Antonio Brown who makes Ben Roethlisberger look better than he is. I'm telling you, man, like, if you have him in the QB1 range, I don't blame you, because the matchup is that good. Like, seriously, the Texans, ever since week 6, there's been one quarterback who's failed to score at least 15.1 fantasy points against them, which is the high end QB2 type, numbers. That's why I'm not willing to move Ben Roethlisberger outside the top 15 or anything. But I'm saying that it's more of like a low end 1, high end 2, who does come with some risk. Whereas, guys like Blake Bortles, who, and let's make a case for, let's talk about Bortles right now, because obviously, he's played well the last couple weeks. He has completed actually 65 of 91 attempts. That's 71.4% completion rate. He's thrown for 9.9 yards per attempt, 7 touchdowns, no interceptions. And now the reason that I am fully confident, some people are like, well, Mike, are you worried that, they're going to beat San Francisco, that San Francisco is going to be really good, yada, yada, yada. Not really. San Francisco's been playing a lot better, especially against the run. They've only allowed, I want to say, actually it's 0 rushing touchdowns over the last 4 weeks that they've allowed. Leonard Fournette is coming back to this game at less than 100%. They're in the playoffs. They have an outside chance to win that first round bye, but they don't need to run Leonard Fournette 20 to 25 times in this game. I think they lean on Blake Bortles with Dede Westbrook, with Keelan Cole. And I think Blake Bortles, honestly, I think he's like a top 8 fantasy quarterback this week, and one that I'm so ready to play. The 49ers, since the start of week 3, have allowed at least 18 fantasy points to 9 of 12 quarterbacks. The only 3 quarterbacks who didn't were Carson Palmer, Drew Stanton, both Cardinals, and Mitch Trubisky. So,
who probably threw like 10 passes that game, right? Yeah, I've got Blake Bortles in the top 12. I'm of the 4 quarterbacks he picked up, 2 of them I have lower than Blake Bortles, so I guess it could have been worse. Like, I could be out here starting Marcus Mariota this week, which, it might end up all right. Probably not, though, like 5% chance. So don't start Marcus Mariota. There's a reason I didn't even mention him as an option. Same with Derek Carr at Philadelphia. Jimmy Garoppolo at Jacksonville. I know he's got the highest quarterback rating of all time for quarterbacks with over 200 pass attempts, and he's never lost a football game, but you do not start him against Jacksonville, right, Tags?
No, I'm not playing Jimmy Garoppolo at all. Like, and that's the thing, is some people have said, "Oh, Jimmy Garoppolo has played a cupcake schedule. You can't trust him." I don't find that to be true at all. I think that if you say that, I don't think you've watched the games, because Jimmy Garoppolo, I've watched every game, and he's looked fantastic. Like, he's doing everything
and
right.
He could be significantly better. Like, he could have an extra 4 or 5 touchdowns, and I think he's going to have positive regression that way, just not this week.
Well, on top of that, he's playing with Marquise Goodwin as his number 1 receiver. I understand Marquise Goodwin is better than people thought, but he's still 5'9". He's not a number 1 wide receiver. He's not a possession guy, but they're using him as such. So it's something what Jimmy G's doing, but you don't play quarterbacks against Jacksonville, including Jimmy Garoppolo. But the one player I really don't understand, and I'm looking at the ECR right now, Nick Foles is a top 10 quarterback in the rankings. Blake Bortles is number 12. Jared Goff is 13. Matt Ryan's 14. No, I have no idea why this is happening. Guys, Nick Foles played the Giants last week. Yes, he threw 4 touchdowns. I'm not going to trust that against Oakland. By the way, Oakland, they were a really bad defense for a long time, but ever since they fired their defensive coordinator, they have turned this team around. They've played against Geno Smith, Alex Smith, and Dak Prescott over the last 3 weeks. They've allowed 1 touchdown while intercepting 3 passes. They've turned a corner. I'm telling you, they look like a better defense over the last few weeks, and I don't think that their run defense is still quite miserable. So we should see Philadelphia's run game go. There is not a chance that you can convince me to start Nick Foles over Blake Bortles or Jared Goff. Not a chance.
Not even close for me. I've got Nick Foles at number 15. You nailed it. There's no way he's getting 4 touchdowns again. I mean, I guess there is, but it's very unlikely. He did not really earn those 4 touchdowns. He didn't have the greatest game. So Nick Foles for me is number 15, which means you're going to find someone you like better as a streamer. I do like Blake Bortles, but of the list, Case Keenum, Alex Smith, I have no problem starting either of them. They're both in my top 9. What about you, Tegs?
I'm a little concerned about Keenum. I'm concerned because the Packers are not going to put points on the board. That we know. Brett Hundley has yet to throw a touchdown pass at home this year. He has thrown 5 interceptions there, no touchdowns. It's a game where it should be a run-heavy game script. I already talked about the fact that it's supposed to be, I think it's supposed to be like 2 degrees there. That's the temperature, what it's supposed to be. That's not including the wind chill, which is likely to be maybe 10 below. So it's not ideal conditions for a passing game. It is a division game, which you should typically lower expectations in those games. So that's my only concern with Keenum. I still think that he belongs in the QB1 conversation. I'm not going to move him out of there, but there are concerns about him. And Alex Smith, who should be MVP candidate, Alex Smith, we're entering week 16. Alex Smith has a 5-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. He has 25 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. He's averaging 8.02 yards per attempt. And yet, some people still believe that Alex Smith is the reason the Chiefs have lost 6 of the last 9 games. He's not. He's not at all. The reason I'm okay with him this week, the Dolphins have shown improvement in their defense, but at the same time, they've allowed just 2 touchdowns to Trevor Siemian, and that was Tom Brady, but then it was Tyrod Taylor. So Tom Brady, it was a division game. I always tell you guys to lower expectations for those games, but that was also at home. The Dolphins have allowed 27 points per game on the road compared to just 20 points at home. So this favors Alex Smith. They obviously play better at home. Kareem Hunt's running the ball well. I have no issue with Alex Smith, and he's someone where if I had Alex Smith and Ben Roethlisberger, those are 2 I'd have a tough time deciding between.
Now, Tags, Kirk Cousins and Jameis Winston are both 15 and 16 in ECR, so most experts are saying don't start either of these guys. I actually have Winston in my top 10 against Carolina, who's been struggling against the pass, and Kirk Cousins is number 12 for me. He's faced Denver, but Denver gives up a ton of touchdowns through the air. I'd rather start either of them than Jared Goff or Dak Prescott, who's ECR number 11, probably without Tyron Smith.
I'm not sold on the Jameis Winston one. Jameis Winston struggled against Carolina in both their games last year. He threw just 1 touchdown. If you go back to their week 8 matchup this year when he was at home, he threw for just 210 yards, no touchdowns, 2 interceptions.
Hurricane.
There was not a hurricane, but it was a storm for sure. And
it was a tropical storm, man. It was 50-mile-per-hour winds.
No, there was not. You need to go back and watch the tape of that game. It was not that crazy. Now, was it windy? Yeah, I think it was worse.
It was a tropical storm warning going on right then.
Shenanigans. There's tornado warnings and nothing ever happens too. So I'm not buying that. But anyways, Jameis Winston, did he look better last week? Yes, but here's the concern with him. He may not have Deshaun Jackson. His offensive line is torn to shreds. They're now down 3 starting offensive linemen. Mike Evans looked fantastic last week. Yes, I'll give you that. But Cameron Brate is playing on a bum knee. We saw his snaps trending down, but now he's going to be asked to play a bigger role because O.J. Howard is now on IR. He was placed on IR earlier today. So this team is kind of falling down around him. I just worry about the protection for him. He has disappeared at times in the season. Again, this is a divisional game. They're 10-point underdogs. Like their team implied total is like 18 points. So I have my concerns about Jameis Winston. As for Kirk Cousins, the Broncos have looked better recently. They haven't allowed a single touchdown the last 2 weeks. Their pass rush has generated 11 sacks over the last 5 games, while the Redskins have allowed Cousins to be sacked 15 times in the last 5 games. So I just don't know if the offensive line will hold up for Kirk Cousins to find anyone in that game. And I also don't think they match up very well. Jamison Crowder will see Chris Harris Jr. Josh Doxson's going to see a mix of Bradley Roby and Aqib Talib. So they really need Vernon Davis to step up for Kirk Cousins to do anything in that matchup. So honestly, I'm down on those guys, and they are outside my top 12.
We've got to go back to Jameis Winston because I can't let you get away with that comment that he's disappeared. He's been hurt in 2 games that he started. Okay, so 10 attempts, 13 attempts.
People still played him.
He played in a tropical storm once, and besides those games, listen, hold on. Besides those games, 18 fantasy points, 26, 18, 26, 20, 18, 25. His floor is 18 fantasy points if he doesn't get hurt. 18, man. Carolina's not playing good. You got to start Jameis Winston.
I disagree on the fact that I think if you watch, if you sit back, honestly, I'm not sure the stats that you're referencing because I have him below 18 fantasy points quite a few times. Even to start the year, he just finished with 12 and 15. So I think the scoring settings might be a little bit different. I don't know if it's 6-point touchdowns that you're referencing, but if you watch Jameis Winston,
I'm on Fantasy Pros website, man. So I don't know where you're looking.
So those scoring settings, must be different because I'm using fantasy data, which is one we actually used to supply our stats, so I'm confused on it. But I want to say that Jameis Winston, if you go and you watch the games that Jameis Winston plays, he's not a top 12 quarterback. Like, he's just not very good.
Agree.
And I understand the fantasy points have been there, and that's fine. But do I want to continue to expect those to happen with such bad quarterback play? I really don't. And honestly, would it shock you if Carolina controls this clock? Tampa Bay can't stop the run. They can't stop the pass. They can't stop anything. This game is in Carolina, so he's on the road in a divisional matchup. There's nothing good that can come out of that, in my opinion. Now, Jameis, is he a high-end QB2? Sure. But having him around like QB15, I think his ECR is exactly where it should be.
He hasn't thrown fewer than 30 passes once this season. Blake Bortles hasn't thrown more than 30 passes 6 times this season. Blake Bortles is a worse quarterback than Jameis Winston. If you're going to go out there and start someone who's not a good quarterback, let it be Jameis Winston instead of Blake Bortles, right?
Wait a minute. So Bortles, that's the thing, is like, if you would ask me that at the beginning of the year, yeah, but Bortles has been playing better. He's been playing better football than Jameis Winston. Like, and that's not even close.
I've
and
been watching, really, man. I'm a Jags fan, and Blake Bortles is still not good.
I
disagree.
I think he's played fantastic the last 3 weeks, like fantastic. And I'm not overlooking that. Jameis Winston, I've watched, man, and I'm telling you, I'm a Jameis Winston fan. I think he has all the tools to eventually become a great quarterback if he puts everything together. But to this point, I don't know, man. I mean, it does help that the Panthers are going to be without Thomas Davis. I will say that he's one of their better linebackers in that team, so that does help Jameis, but it also hurts, as I mentioned, if he doesn't have Deshaun Jackson.
By the way, what'd I tell you? 1 game on Thomas Davis there.
It did, yeah. I got knocked down to 1 game, so you were definitely correct on that one.
All right, last one, Matt Ryan, starter sit.
Start. I think that game has shootout potential written all over it. It's just, I don't know. The biggest turnaround for that Saints defense is Marshawn Lattimore. And they trusted him to cover Julio Jones one-on-one. And Julio, he did fine. Like, it wasn't like a matchup where you want for Julio. But if they're going to trust him in one-on-one coverage, I do think that some good things can come out of that. I don't know, man. It's in New Orleans. You know the Saints are going to put up points on the board, so I just see this as being a shootout. In their first game, the one they played a couple of weeks ago, Matt Ryan only threw the ball just 27 times. I know he threw 3 interceptions in that game, which was probably one of his worst games of the year. But again, in New Orleans, it's a sneaky shootout. Would I start him over like names like Bortles or Goff? No, but I do think that if you're looking at him and someone like Jameis Winston, I'd rather play Matt Ryan.
Matt Ryan has 1 top 9 quarterback performance this year. He has 3 top 14 performances this year. New Orleans has a really good pass defense. Not really good, but it's pretty good. Like, the chances of him being a top 14 quarterback this week, I would say is pretty slim. I'm not starting Matt Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, it's fair, and that's what I'm saying. Matt Ryan, though, it's oddly enough, he's played better on the road this year. He's averaged 260 yards, 1.6 touchdowns, compared to just 238 yards and 1.0 touchdowns at home. So, man, again, this is not a matchup I'm like targeting. If I have my choice of streamers, it's definitely Bortles. Like, that's who I'm playing in my leagues myself. But if Bortles is gone, if Goff is gone, and you're looking at Matt Ryan or, like you said, Kirk Cousins, Jameis Winston, those guys in that territory, I'd rather play Matt Ryan.
You're making me feel a lot better about Bortles tags, but I'm just so worried he's going to put up like 6 fantasy points, man.
I mean, if he does that against the 49ers, I'll concede. But the thing is it's the 49ers. There have been a lot of bad quarterbacks, including Marcus Mariota last week, who's been playing awful the entire season, throwing for 241 yards, 2 touchdowns. And that's essentially what we're looking for, is a 250-yard game, 2 touchdowns. We're not expecting miracles out of Blake Bortles, but we do know that his ceiling is roughly 300 yards and 3 touchdowns.
If the Titans offered the Jags this offseason Marcus Mariota straight up for Blake Bortles, do you think the Jags turn it down? I mean, it's not going to happen, but like we're at a point. We're at a point here. You think so? He was so bad this year, man. And Bortles was, like you said, pretty good. We were talking about Mariota as maybe being the best quarterback in football after this year, right?
I did not. For the record, I was always Team Jameis in the debate between Jameis and Mariota. I felt like Jameis has the tools to become a more dominant quarterback in the league, whereas Mariota was, I felt like he was going to be a foundation quarterback, but I did have my concerns. I think we talked to John Paulson and at the beginning of the year, because I talked to someone in a chat about it the other day, and they're like, I remember you had, I think it was John on the show, where we talked about it, and I was concerned about his touchdown regression, because his touchdown rate last year was like elite. It was like 7%, which is something that is reserved for the greats of all time, and I don't think that Mariota
is
like
Kurt Warner territory.
Kurt Warner, yeah. But yeah, I mean, Mariota, he's looked so bad this year, and that's the thing is, like, even before Mariota last week throwing 2 touchdowns, you go back to TJ Yates, 175 yards and 2 touchdowns in relief of Tom Savage. So, I mean, this defense is so bad. The 49ers don't have an answer for D.D. Westbrook. They don't have an answer for Keelan Cole. It's just not looking good, man.
All right, before we jump on over to running back, I want to talk for a minute about one of the sponsors of today's show, SeatGeek. The NFL playoffs are coming up, and as someone who doesn't really enjoy traveling much, I think driving like 4 or 5 hours, going and watching a playoff football game, even if they're not my team, and then staying overnight, I think that's a great trip. I think that's better than going to the beach and getting all sandy and stuff. So I'm eyeing Chief tickets on SeatGeek's app in case they do pull out home field advantage in the first week. I used to always spend a long time searching around other sites to finally find a decent value. Now that I've got the SeatGeek app on my phone, it is by far the easiest way I've found to shop for tickets. I can be anywhere with just a few taps, can instantly find the best value across multiple ticket sites. I don't have to look at all these sites anymore. I can just look on the SeatGeek app. SeatGeek saves you time and money by grading the value of every seat across multiple sites. Plus, every purchase is fully guaranteed, so you can shop for tickets on SeatGeek with confidence. Make SeatGeek your go-to app for finding the best deals on every type of ticket, from sports and concerts to comedy and theater. And best of all, our listeners get $20 off their first SeatGeek purchase. Just download the SeatGeek app and enter the promo code FANTASYPROS today. That's promo code FANTASYPROS, all one word, for $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase. All right, Tag, so let's go on to running back, and I want to start at C.J. Anderson here. Like, I'm not sure everyone's aware of this. He's a must-start. 52 carries in the last 2 weeks and a good matchup. I've got him over players like Carlos Hyde, Jay Ajayi, Marshawn Lynch, and even Jamal Williams. So, I think these are going to be kind of the range. I don't think we're going to be talking about guys like running back 32. Should I start him? If you made the championship, you've probably got 3 guys better than running back 32, right, Tegs?
Yeah, you most likely do. But C.J. Anderson, yeah, it's been really interesting. It's ever been since they fired their offensive coordinator. C.J. Anderson has been getting more and more involved, where they've kind of gone away from Jamal Charles, which honestly, it took way too long for them to realize that, because Jamal Charles, if this wasn't like a Super Bowl team, they should have immediately moved on, cut Jamal Charles, let him go to a different team, something. But yeah, C.J. Anderson's been the one to kind of trust in this offense, one of the only ones to trust. Washington has been a kind of a stomping ground for opposing running backs. So, I mean, I agree with you. I think that he's a must start if you have him on your roster. It's unlikely that you have 3 running backs who are a better play than him.
Right. So, Tags, who in this range is somebody that you wouldn't start? Like, are you avoiding DeMarco Murray, or is the Rams matchup good enough that you're willing to even start him?
Yeah, the matchup with the Rams is not one that I'm necessarily afraid of for DeMarco Murray. The game script probably favors him a lot. We talked about it quite a bit on this show, and the fact that he plays the passing downs. And, there's 2 ways this game can go. One, if Tennessee's winning, they're going to grind it out. And obviously, we're going to see both DeMarco Murray and Derrick Henry. Do we think that's going to happen against the Rams? Probably not. If they do fall behind, Derrick Henry doesn't play much when they fall behind, which means DeMarco Murray would be in on the passing downs. And again, the Rams, if there's one weakness on that defense, it's against the run. One player that I would not start is that, going back to the whole C.J. Anderson thing, I would not play the guy on the other sideline this week. Samaje Perine reminds me of like a Frank Gore type play this week. And I mean, it's not to say that you don't play him like by all means necessary, but if you have somebody that you're debating like DeMarco Murray, I'd rather play Murray over Perine. Perine against the Broncos, while they've struggled as a team this year, their run defense has been legit. They've only allowed 3.3 yards per carry, 6 rushing touchdowns. The last couple of weeks, Perine has just looked very mediocre, kind of like how he did at the beginning of the season. So whatever that burst was that he had, and in those weeks, what was it, 12 and 13 or something like that, it's gone. So this Denver team matches up extremely well with him, and he doesn't offer too much in the passing game. He's only caught 6 passes for 36 yards over the last 2 weeks combined. So I think he's just like a volume RB3, RB4 play, and a very boring one.
Yeah, I'm with you. I've got him, like how far down do you have him? I have him at running back 31, so I mean, there's plenty of guys I have above him. Frank Gore's one of them.
Yeah, he's in that RB 30 to 35 range for me. It's like as I go through the week, I end up fine tuning things and going through and finding the injuries that impact fantasy players and whatnot. But yeah, he's going to be in that low end RB3 category for me.
What about like Kerwin Williams? Would you start him against the Giants? I mean, AP's out. Kerwin's been getting, 15 to 20 touches every single game. He's going to get it again. The Giants are horrible. I know he's not like a sexy fantasy player, but I've got him in my top 30. I have no problem with starting Kerwin Williams this week if you don't have better guys.
Yeah, he's in that same territory. That's like that's the players I'm torn on, because Kerwin Williams, he's another guy that doesn't offer you anything in the passing game. He also doesn't rack up very much yardage. We've seen his yardage go down in the last couple weeks, and which ultimately means if he doesn't score, he's going to let you down, and that's what it really is. I mean, he's a body, he's a high floor option. Like, he's just like Perine. I think I'd put them in the same thing. I'd probably start Perine over him just because Perine does maybe add 2 or 3 receptions per game, whereas Williams, I think, topped out at 1. He hasn't scored a touchdown since week 1. There's just all sorts of worries there. Drew Stanton starting at quarterback, that obviously I think it's a downgrade from Blaine Gabbert. So I'm not a huge fan of Kerwin Williams. One player, Bobby, I wanted to ask for your opinion on, because I might be too high on him, and that's Jonathan Stewart. Did you know that Jonathan Stewart ranks 14th among running backs in carries this year? Most would be shocked to find out that basically Christian McCaffrey, he's like out carrying him a ton. You're seeing Jonathan Stewart get 15 carries a game essentially, and it's just a consistent thing going up against this Bucs run defense that is going to be without Gerald McCoy, a team that cannot stop the run to save their life. My bold prediction last week was that Devonta Freeman went for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. He did, but the one touchdown was overturned because of that stupid fumble that they recovered in the end zone. I don't even want to talk about that. Probably cost me a pretty penny in DFS, but Jonathan Stewart, I feel like he's like a must-play RB2 this week.
Are we talking like $1 million, man? Like if you had a chance to win $1 million and Devonta Freeman, if that fumble blew it, like, you got to tell everybody.
It wasn't $1 million. It cost me probably, okay. I want to say it was, I want to say the difference was about like $900.
$900, man. What are you, in middle school? That's nothing.
Get out of here. There's a lot of guys that are listening to this show that would love to win $900 playing DFS, and it was just like
messing. I would love to win $900, man.
It was on a small slate too, so it wasn't like I was playing heavy or anything like that. So, but yeah, it would have been nice. A little. I mean, I still won some money playing DFS. I had a lot of Devonta Freeman. I had a lot of Mike Evans. So, I did well, but it could have been better. Is all I'm saying.
Let me ask you this, Tags. Would you rather start a running back who has 9 fantasy relevant weeks, that's top 30, or 10?
You're setting me up for failure here, dude. What are you asking me?
I'm waiting for your answer.
You know the answer, so just get on with it.
The answer is that Tags would rather start Duke Johnson with 10 fantasy relevant weeks than LaShawn McCoy with 9. Is that what you're saying, Tags? Duke Johnson is a must start. He gets it. He gets it done 10 out of 14 weeks this season. So I know Chicago is not the best defense to go against, but he's ECR number 35. I have him within my top 30 every single week because the odds of him being top 30 is about 70%. It just is.
Yeah, he's someone that I hold a little bit of a grudge against, because I remember the one week that I said, you know what, I'm going to trust him in my cash game, because he has been uber efficient. Like, most people don't understand how efficient Duke Johnson's been, how consistent he's been. But then, of course, that week was the week where he scored like I think it was 2 points. So it was really, I'm holding a grudge against Duke Johnson. But the matchup against the Bears is a pretty good one. They just put Pernell McPhee on the IR, another one of their linebackers, down for the year. This game is, again, taking place in Chicago. We're in late December. It's not likely to be very ideal passing temperatures. So if we look at the Bears and what they allow to running backs, it hasn't been much on the ground. I think you can move the ball through the air a little bit more if they line him up as like a wide receiver. Try and make things easier for DeShone Kizer, because he's pushing the ball downfield too much. He's making stupid decisions. If you have him checked down to Duke Johnson a lot more, it's going to create space for the guys down the field. So Duke Johnson, yeah. I can never trust that coaching staff, though. That's the problem, is because they said he was going to get more work, and he's seen more than 7 carries just once all season.
Yeah, Tex, you're right. Duke Johnson does only have more than 7 rushes one time, but he's also on pace for like 70-plus receptions. If you had a wide receiver on pace for 70-plus receptions, you would start him every single week, and Duke Johnson gets 5 rushes a game.
Yeah, well, that's the crazy part is that Duke Johnson has been ultra efficient. He's already scored more fantasy points this year than he has in each of his first 2 seasons, even though his touches are pretty much in line. Like he's not seeing much more work. He's just scored 6 touchdowns this season, whereas in the past 2 seasons, he scored just 3 touchdowns combined. So I don't know if that keeps up, but there's touchdown regression expected in there because he only has 133 touches on the year. So I don't think that he can keep scoring a touchdown every 20 touches or whatever it is. So, man, it's tough. But I do understand. If you're in a PPR league, I think that you bump him up your board. But there's one player, Bobby, I feel the need to mention before we move on to wide receiver and or another running back. Alex Collins, there's been questions, and honestly, during the week, I'm going through my process. I don't get to answer many sit-start questions, and I try not to because I don't have all the information yet. But Alex Collins has been popping up nonstop in my inbox asking, should I start him, should I not? And yes, the answer is absolutely yes. The Colts defense has allowed 196 yards to the Broncos running backs last week, 192 yards to the Bills running backs last week. Each team had 42 carries against them. The Ravens are at home in this game. Their defense is going to take care of the Colts offense. The game script is perfect for Alex Collins. So I didn't think it was a question to me personally, but a lot of people have asked it. So I'm saying that Alex Collins is a must play this week.
I've been seeing his name too in my inbox a ton, and it was really surprising. But you have to remember, I mean, these championship teams are loaded. I would start Alex Collins though above Leonard Fournette. I'd start him above Jordan Howard, Christian McCaffrey, Lamar Miller, Carlos Hyde, Marshawn Lynch, all those guys, no question. So yeah, Alex Collins. I mean, I can't imagine he's not one of your top 3 running backs. Tags, let me give you a scenario here, okay, man? Because there's 3 more running backs I want to touch on before we move on. Let's say you're really good at fantasy football, and you've got Le'Veon Bell and Todd Gurley. Okay, you got them in rounds 1 and 2. And then for your flex, you have to decide between Joe Mixon, Isaiah Crowell, Mike Davis, and Derrick Henry. Which of those 4 are you picking?
Mixon for sure if he plays. Like, if he plays, I'm playing against Detroit. Detroit's been awful against the run ever since losing Haloti Ngata. They're just not a very good run defense. I think they've allowed 11 rushing touchdowns in their last 6 games. They've just been pathetic. They've been awful. So Joe Mixon, if he gets cleared in time from this concussion, which as of this moment, he still hasn't, which is really worrisome because it's been 2.5 weeks now. But if he plays, he's in my lineup for sure.
If he plays, is he getting 20 touches again, or is he going to get like 5?
He's getting 20 touches. And that's the thing. Like I've made that clear because I was actually getting like bombarded on Sunday morning from this guy on Twitter saying that the Saints aren't going to use Alvin Kamara a lot coming back from his concussion. Are you dumb? Blah, blah. Why would you have him ranked as a top 10 running back? And guys, a concussion is different than every other injury. Like if someone's coming back from a knee injury, they're coming back from a shoulder injury, if they're coming back from some sort of body injury that is not their head that can be re-injured, like nothing changes from a concussion. If Joe Mixon clears the concussion protocol,
it's not like you're playing hurt or anything, or you're limited.
Correct. Exactly. And that's what I'm saying. If he's back, I am trusting him just as I normally would.
Okay, so let's take Mixon out then. Crowell, Mike Davis, Derrick Henry, and we'll throw in Theo Riddick too. You playing any of those 4 guys? And if you had to choose one, who you taking?
I don't even know if Theo Riddick's going to play. Apparently he has a wrist issue. So it might be Amir Abdullah in his role plus Theo Riddick's role this week, which would be interesting. Honestly, I'm not really a fan of any of those running backs you talked about. I mean, Mike Davis, maybe that's the one that I would go with because I think he's the one with the best chance of Seattle going in and blowing out the Cowboys. I think that's the most likely of the scenarios. I know they're a 5-point underdog, which is really mind-blowing to me. I don't think the Cowboys should be favored by almost a touchdown against anybody, let alone Russell Wilson-led offense. So I would say Mike Davis is the one I would go with of those guys.
Me too. Yep. All right. So we're going to get going to wide receivers in just a minute, but first I want to tell you all about Leesa mattresses. So my family's been dealing with this cold for a few weeks, and I don't have to tell you this, but there's nothing worse than not being able to sleep because of a cold and you're just up all night and you want to get better so you need to sleep. That hasn't been an issue at all with my Leesa mattress. As soon as I lay down, I'm asleep like a rock. I mean, I don't think I've even lasted 5 minutes before I fell asleep any night since I got this mattress. And I'll bet you'll have a similar experience because Leesa mattresses really are the best. You can see for yourself as Leesa is offering 100 nights risk-free and with free shipping. And we've got a promo code for you if you want to try it. It's going to get you $100 off your order. Just go to leesa.com/fantasypros. That's sa.com/fantasypros for $100 off your mattress order. Okay, Tags, where do you want to start here at wide receiver?
All right, at wide receiver, I want to talk about someone that it's really tough for me to recommend him this week, but it's also tough for me not to after the way he played last week, and that's Sterling Shepard. He plays about 75% of his snaps out of the slot. And the reason this is so interesting to me is because Patrick Peterson has been a cornerback who hasn't traditionally gone into the slot to cover wide receivers. Now, it reminded me when I started writing up this game, I was like, there was a very, very similar situation last year when Stephon Diggs was going on a terror throughout the league, and he was just eating up opposing defenses. He escaped playing against top tier cornerbacks because he played out of the slot. The Cardinals were asked about it. Bruce Arians, they asked him, they said, will you allow him to cover Stephon Diggs? Being that there was no legitimate number 2 at the time because Adam Thielen was still not considered like a good receiver at that point, they said, we're not going to put that out of question. And Patrick Peterson did, in fact, go in the slot to cover Stephon Diggs in that game, who had been, again, he was extremely hot coming into that game. In that game, I went back and looked at it. He saw 7 targets. He finished with 6 catches for 37 yards. So Patrick Peterson was able to stay underneath him, keep the plays in front of him. He played well out of the slot. That is my concern with Sterling Shepard this week. So if you're looking at someone like Sterling Shepard or someone like Dede Westbrook, I'm probably going to lean Westbrook.
Westbrook, okay. Yeah, I mean, those two are fairly close for me. I've got Westbrook a little bit higher as well. ECR has Shepard 1 spot higher. I mean, you look at Shepard, last week he had 16 targets. What's the over-under on for him this week? Like 8?
I'd set the over-under at 7.5 this week.
7.5, yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, he's not getting 16 targets this week. Eli Manning's not throwing 57 passes. It's against Arizona. So, the really interesting thing to me in this game, I would love to see Patrick Peterson go to offense and be a wide receiver. Like, I'd start him in the fantasy championship this week in his first game ever at wide receiver. Why don't teams do that? They do it in high school. We've seen it a few times in college. Like, you've got this world-class athlete in Patrick Peterson. Just put him at wide receiver and see what happens. What's it going to hurt?
I just feel like we're at the age in sports where it's like these are such finely tuned athletic machines, essentially is what they are. And I think if they try to get them to focus on too many things at once, it can limit what they would do on the other side of the ball. I'd rather keep him on the one side and have him be elite at that one thing than really good at both things. I'll take his elite defense. They need wide receivers though.
I'll tell you what, if Jalen Ramsey saw Patrick Peterson on the other side, he would legitimately poop in his pants right there on the field. He would be scared to death. You can't guard this guy.
That's too funny. And by the way, if you went back on my timeline, it was I think it was last week or the week before. If you went on my Twitter timeline, you can see Devontae Adams wrote an article talking about the toughest cornerbacks that he's played in the NFL. And he said Patrick Peterson, if you go and read it, it's really neat to have a wide receiver's perspective on what makes a cornerback really good and some of the best. He said that Patrick Peterson is hands down the best cornerback that he's ever played against. And he just said it's ridiculous the way he's able to get up to speed, his change of direction, everything. So that's why when you say wide receiver, I don't laugh at it because like the guy's a ridiculous athlete, but he's one of the best in the game. And that's why I'm scared of Sterling Shepard this week.
When I play Madden, that's the first thing I do, man. I go in there and I change the depth charts and I get Patrick Peterson as my wide receiver.
That's so funny, dude. Madden. What's funny is I actually asked for Madden for Christmas. I haven't played Madden in like 5 years. And for Christmas, my wife asked me what I wanted. And I was like, there's nothing I really, really want. So I was like, just give me Madden. I'll try and play some video games this offseason. So I'm going to see how that goes. I haven't played in a while. I'm probably going to get killed.
Cool, man. Yeah, just put Patrick Peterson at wide receiver. You'll be fine. You'll be all right. The people do want start-sit decisions, though, so let's talk Keelan Cole, okay? Right now, he's ECR number 33. Where do you have him, Tex?
Play him. He's in the high end wide receiver 3 territory for me. He's a play. There are little warning signs around him, which is why I prefer Westbrook this week, because Keelan Cole, before this outbreak that he just had this past week, he had just 3 targets in each of week 13 and week 14. So that's obviously concerning. You're not able to sustain continuous production without that. Now, Marquise Lee is going to be out for this game. He's not going to play. So that does help. I think both Keelan Cole and Dede Westbrook are startable. In one of my leagues, my home league actually, I had Antonio Brown go down, so I went to the waiver wire and they were both there. Like I didn't think that it's just me not paying attention as much as I should have, but Dede Westbrook and Keelan Cole were there. I actually made the choice to go with Dede Westbrook. I put in a claim for Cole, but I didn't get him to because I just wanted to basically play defense. But Dede Westbrook's the one I'd rather play just because he was the one seeing more consistent targets. And even though D.D. Westbrook last week didn't pop up on the stat sheet, at 21 yards, 2 catches, he did other things. He got 2 pass interference calls that put them in really good position. And against the 49ers, again, I think there's room for both of these wide receivers to produce. The only, Bobby, and I'll ask you, being that you're a Jaguars guy, the only concern that I have for Keelan Cole this week is that if Marquise Lee is out, which he is, he's not going to play. I can promise you that. They're going to slide Keelan Cole to the outside. They're going to put him back on the perimeter, which is where he was playing when Allen Hurns was in the starting lineup. Does that hurt his production? Because Keelan Cole wasn't getting nearly as much done playing on the perimeter as he was in the slot.
I'm not really too worried about it, man. You watch this kid play, and he gets better every single week. Just listen to this. I mean, the thing is, he only got 3 targets those weeks because he was playing 60% of the snaps. He's going to play 90+ this week with Marquise Lee out. He's less than 90 receiving yards behind Marquise Lee, and he has 24 less receptions. Like, they throw bombs to Keelan Cole all day because he's big, he's fast, he's got good hands. He's the whole package, man. Like, this is a legitimate wide receiver in this league. It's not a fluke, someone who just happened to fall into, the depth chart because of injuries. Like, he is a good wide receiver. He's going to eat them alive this week. I'm tempted to put Keelan Cole ahead of D.D. Westbrook this week. It's really close for me.
Now let's play a would you rather game. Would you rather play Marquise Goodwin or Keelan Cole?
Well, I mean, Marquise Goodwin's going up against Jacksonville. I'm not starting him. I don't have him in my top 35, so Keelan Cole.
Yeah, I'm with you. There's a lot of people. There was actually, I think it was Dave Richard from CBS said earlier today that he has Marquise Goodwin as his number 8 wide receiver this week, or number 7. I was like, what?
Was there supposed to be a 0 behind that?
No. On the year, no, that's the thing, is someone asked him about it. And on the year, they've allowed just 5 top 20 wide receivers. Got like it's ridiculous. It's gotten to the point where you just don't play wide receivers unless they're Antonio Brown, DeAndre Hopkins. Like, those guys, those are the only ones you play against Jacksonville. They are allowing just 6.36 yards per target to opposing wide receivers, which is by far the best in the NFL. The next closest is all the way down at 6.67 yards per target, and that's the Chargers, who people tend to avoid in their matchups as well. So honestly, Marquise Goodwin, he can get one big play and pay off for you, but the concern is that he only has 1 touchdown this year, so it's very unlikely that he scores a touchdown. And so when you think that, okay, then he needs yardage. To get consistent yardage against the secondary just doesn't happen. So Marquise Goodwin is down in wide receiver 4 territory for me.
I mean, he does have 25 targets in the last 2 weeks, but here's the role with the Jags, okay? They've actually been this good. They've actually been a little better than this. But you take a player's average fantasy points and you divide them in half. That's how good they've been against the pass.
Mm-hmm. It's ridiculous what they've done this year. They're like the Ravens of the early 2000s, where you don't play players against them. That's how it works.
Yeah. All right, Tags. So we've got a couple high-end guys here. If you have to start one of them, we've got Robbie Anderson, T.Y. Hilton. You've got Randall Cobb with Brett Hundley. I don't know why he's still number 37 ECR. And then Sammy Watkins at Tennessee. We've seen him have a few big games.
I'd rather play Watkins of all these guys. I say that because he's got the best quarterback position. You have Robbie Anderson, who's going to match up with Casey Hayward. That's not a matchup you target, especially with Bryce Petty behind center. T.Y. Hilton hasn't done anything this year that would make me feel comfortable starting him. And going against Baltimore, that's a concern for me. The weather is not going to be ideal for them there. Yeah, Hilton, again, one play, okay, maybe, but I think Watkins has a better shot at that play against Tennessee. Tennessee, their secondary is pitiful. And that's the thing, is like when you go through their schedule, you'll see that there's certain parts of their schedule they look better than others. They really do well. I shouldn't say really do well, but they play a lot better against bad competition. The Rams are not bad competition. They are a legitimate offense. They've been pouncing teams. Like, they're trying to send a statement through the NFL that they are the team to beat. They are the team that their defense is getting better at the right time. Their run defense has started to step up a little bit over the last couple of weeks. Sammy Watkins, they need to keep him somewhat happy, because if you remember earlier in the season, he started saying, I need to see more targets. And he never really got that huge jump in targets, but they made him happy because he was scoring touchdowns. He was contributing. Again, with Robert Woods back in the field, there's no focus on Sammy Watkins. He's kind of like the 1B, if not the 2, to opposing defenses at this point in time. So against Tennessee, I think he could beat them deep. The game's in Tennessee, so the weather should be good. I don't want to trust Randall Cobb either. Like I just said,
no way, man.
Brett Hundley. he hasn't thrown a touchdown at home. No.
I mean, I know Devontae Adams is almost certainly going to be out, right? But yeah, I'm not playing Randall Cobb. I've got him around 50. Here's the thing with Sammy Watkins. Like, when's the last time he had more than 4 receptions in a game? It was week 3, Tags.
Oof.
Week 3, man. He's the 3rd wide receiver on this team. Robbie Anderson's number 1. T.Y. Hilton is number 1. So, like, they're going to get targets. Sammy Watkins is not a safe play. Honestly, I would rather pick up Corey Coleman. He's all the way down at number 46 ECR, but he's out there for you. You can pick up Corey Coleman against Chicago because I think they're going to not shut down Josh Gordon. Like, I'm still playing Josh Gordon. He's a top 25 receiver, but I think Corey Coleman's going to get a lot more looks, and he is really talented, Ben.
He is talented. The quarterback situation worries me, though. He's not a big target, like just a possession receiver like Josh Gordon can be. And going back to T.Y. Hilton, like you were talking about, when was the last time that Sammy Watkins had 4 receptions? Did you know that T.Y. Hilton, since the start of week 6, so that includes week 6, he has had just 2 games with more than 3 receptions, and one of them was against the Houston Texans, so that shouldn't even count.
Wow, I'm looking at his game log. Wow, he sucks. he has, oh man, what a horrible game log. 19 yards, 27 yards, 15 yards, 23, 15, 20. What in the world happened to him?
Yeah, Jacoby Brissett happened to him. The offense happened to him. The offensive line happened to him. There's so many things that happen. They don't have a run game. The Indianapolis is in a very, very bad spot as a franchise because their offense, even if Andrew Luck comes back as Andrew Luck, they don't have much on offense. And then if you look on the defensive side of the ball, they obviously don't have much there. So it's you're in dire times if you're an Indianapolis Colts fan.
I don't want to make Colts fans panic or Andrew Luck dynasty owners like myself panic. I think there's a 20% chance Andrew Luck retires this offseason, Tags.
20%?
I'm not messing around. I'm not messing around, dude. I think it's a legitimate possibility.
I mean, he might retire just to get away from the Colts, but I don't think he retires, though.
He comes back as a baseball pitcher. Wouldn't that be awesome?
Now you're just dreaming. Now you're dreaming.
All right, man. I want to ask you a couple guys. I've got some questions about these. Must start or on the fringe? Robert Woods.
Must start.
Demaryius Thomas at Washington.
On the fringe, depends on the quarterback. I want to see if it's Brock Osweiler. I trust him a lot more with Brock Osweiler. In the 3 starts that Brock has played, Demaryius scored in every single matchup, and he's going to see more of Bashaud Breeland, whereas Emmanuel Sanders will see more of Josh Norman. So Demaryius, he's on the fringe, I guess, depending on who your other options are, but it's unlikely that you have 3 wide receivers better than Demaryius.
Yeah, I've got him wide receiver 26. Martavis Bryant at Houston.
I'm going to go with a must start.
Me too. I've got him number 16 for wide receivers. Mike Wallace face Indianapolis.
That's another must start.
Mohamed Sanu at New Orleans.
The best matchup on the field. He's on the fringe just depending because you might have D.D. Westbrook and Mohamed Sanu, and I'd probably take D.D. Westbrook. But if you're deciding between Sanu and someone like Sterling Shepard, I'd probably lean Sanu. So it's on the fringe just because there's a lot of players in that range by him. But he has a good matchup.
Yeah, I've got Sanu number 24, so I think you're starting him. Jamison Crowder face Denver.
Bench. Not even on the fringe. He's a bench.
Yep, I agree. Cooper Kupp at Tennessee.
On the fringe. Logan Ryan, probably the toughest matchup on the field of the Rams wide receivers, so he's on the fringe.
All right, last one here. Rashard Matthews face the Rams.
On the fringe for sure. The Rams have done really good against wide receivers this year, and the ones that they've struggled against have been slot receivers.
I hope you have better options than him. I would probably rather play Paul Richardson at Dallas than Rashard Matthews. But the reason I brought up Matthews, he's number 32 ECR, so almost all experts are saying, yeah, he's a top 3 wide receiver, not a top 3, a top 36 wide receiver. But I'm not really there with Rashard this week.
I agree with you. I think Richardson is someone that I'd probably consider over. I think there's similar options in the offenses they play in, but Richardson has the better matchup.
All right, so let me give you another situation. Let's say that you're working on your number 3 wide receiver. You're in rough shape here, okay? You've got Chris Hogan, if he plays, okay? You've got Kendall Wright, and you've got Nelson Aguilar, face Oakland.
Chris Hogan, if he plays, I mean... It's against his former team, so there's always that stupid revenge game narrative, but the Patriots are at home. Tom Brady, he needs to get back on track before these playoffs start, so this is a week where he can try and do it against Buffalo. They've been relatively good against quarterbacks this year, so it's going to be rough for him to finish as the QB1, but I do think he has a solid week, and if Hogan comes back, those other guys, there's risk that that Mitch Trubisky throws 15 times and Kendall Wright sees 3 targets. That's a real thing. And then talking about Nelson Aguilar, he's interesting. He's one that I would consider over Hogan just because there is risk with Hogan coming back from the injury. He obviously only played 1 week. He took a week off and then back. There's risk there. Nelson Aguilar actually played pretty well with Nick Foles last week in a tough matchup because he was playing against Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie covering the slot for the Giants, who is probably their best cornerback at this point, but that's not saying much. But he played well. I think it was 5 catches for 79 yards and a touchdown, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, you're right. I don't know. I'm worried about Chris Hogan. See, I can't make up my mind on him. Like, he's been really good when he does play, but let's say he comes back and he gets 5 targets for 1 reception again, right? Like, let's say he comes back and he's on the field for 20 snaps and you start him in the championship week.
That's obviously the concern you have with him. But the thing is with him, I being they held him out last week in such an important game against the Steelers, I don't think they're putting him back on the field unless he's ready. So it's either he's playing or he's not. And when he's on the field, you mentioned it, before his injury, he had 60 yards in all but 2 games, and that was through 8 weeks. So 6 of 8 games, he had 60 yards or more. He was scoring touchdowns. I want to say he had 6 or 7 touchdowns through those games. So him and Brandon Cooks were almost identical in stats, and people view Brandon Cooks as a wide receiver 1. So, I mean, that's what I'm thinking is that Chris Hogan, if he's back in the lineup, if he's healthy, he should be in like that wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3 conversation. But again, there is risk with him. And Nelson Aguilar, again, if the Raiders are playing better and they've only allowed 1 passing touchdown over the last 3 weeks, that's a little concerning to me.
Let's just imagine that Nathan Peterman's the starting quarterback for the Bills. He's got Sammy Watkins, Robert Woods, Chris Hogan. He's a start in the fantasy championship this week, right?
Oh, no. But it is funny to think. It is funny to think about that
I can't believe they got rid of all those guys.
Yeah, it's funny to think that the Bills wide receiving core could be Sammy Watkins, Robert Woods, and Chris Hogan.
And the Rams quarterback core, I mean, Nick Foles, Case Keenum, Jared Goff. Like, what was Jeff Fisher doing? And he might get an NFL head coach job next season. What a joke. Like, hire me. If you're going to hire somebody, hire me instead of Jeff Fisher.
I'll show you how to go sub 500. No, but I had someone on Twitter at me and said, Mike, I'm a Bears fan too. He's like, can we make a pact that if the Bears hire Jeff Fisher, that will stop being fans? And I said, absolutely. Like, I will not root for the Bears if they bring in Jeff Fisher. And that's,
dude, join me. It'll be fun.
I'm dead serious.
We'll get to see the Jags like shut everyone out. Yeah, man.
Yeah, I'll join the Jaguars bandwagon. Like, there's a lot of players in that team I like, but I don't think the Bears do it. I think they've already been there, done that with John Fox, and Ryan Pace may have learned his lesson. No. If you're a fan of an NFL team and they hire Jeff Fisher, you should seriously think about a different team for your fandom.
That's awesome. Okay, man, let's go on over to tight end. You got to start Gronk, Travis Kelce, Zach Ertz, Greg Olsen, obviously after last week. What about Evan Ingram, Delaney Walker? Must starts?
Evan Ingram's absolutely a must start. Like the guy, he's averaging, I think, what was the number? I looked at it earlier today and it's like 9.8 targets over his last 4 games. It's like wide receiver stuff that we dream of at a position that's like incredibly volatile. Yes, follow the targets. Again, if Sterling Shepard's being covered by Patrick Peterson, Evan Ingram is going to be the number 1 target. But it is important to know that the Cardinals defense has been so much better ever since Tyvon Branch went down and they had to go to Budda Baker. Budda Baker should have been playing all along because that team is turned a corner. Arizona's defense is a lot better, but he's
a superstar.
He is. I was so mad that the Bears didn't get him. But anyways, getting away from my Bears thing. Delaney Walker, another one. The guy's getting targets. The matchup against the Rams, is it great? Not really, but it's Delaney Walker. The guy sees 7-8 targets per game. You always play those guys. Like, you can never ever sit them because you're never going to have an option who's higher than them on my rankings anyways.
I'm with you. I actually think Delaney Walker is the single most consistent and reliable tight end, so there's no way I'm benching him. What about Jimmy Graham or Kyle Rudolph? You have a really good stat that you shared on Twitter about Jimmy Graham and Austin Hooper. I could not believe it.
Yeah, most people, I said it's a bar bet. Like, if you're at a bar and like you're talking with your friends, you can make a bet and probably win money by saying that Austin Hooper has more receiving yards than Jimmy Graham does this year. The fact that Jimmy Graham has scored 9 touchdowns, that's like kind of skewed everything for a lot of people. And I think that nobody expected these bust performances, but when he stopped scoring touchdowns, it was bound to happen. Now, did we think he'd score 0 points in back-to-back weeks? No, we definitely didn't. And Dallas is a team that honestly, they've been really struggling against tight ends. I think over the last 5 weeks it is. All right. So the Cowboys, through the first 7 games, they didn't allow a single top 12 performance to a tight end. But in the 7 games since, they have allowed 4 of them, including 3 games with 16.9 or more PPR points to Travis Kelce, Austin Hooper, and Hunter Henry. If you've made it somehow to the finals with Jimmy Graham scoring 0 points in back-to-back weeks, you obviously have a team that's built to support such a volatile tight end. But I think that Jimmy Graham is a play this week. Kyle Rudolph, on the other hand, is someone that I'm extremely worried about. He had an ankle injury that had him considered doubtful last week. He was doubtful on Friday. They upgraded him to questionable on Saturday, and then he ended up playing Sunday, though he only played 20 snaps. The game was a blowout, so it's a chance they just held him back just because the game was in a blowout. But playing with an ankle sprain outdoors in a 2-degree temperature is not ideal, especially against Green Bay. Now, Green Bay, they're coming fresh off a game where they allowed Greg Olsen to, look like Greg Olsen from 4 years ago, where I think he had 9 catches for 100 and something yards and a touchdown. Like, it was ridiculous what he was doing. So the matchup maybe isn't as bad as we thought it was, but I have legitimate concerns about Kyle Rudolph.
You have to, but what are you going to do? Are you going to go to the waiver wire and pick up Cameron Brate or Antonio Gates? Tight end just sucks so bad this week. If you don't have a tight end, if you're starting Jimmy Graham or Kyle Rudolph, you seriously might as well just quit, because they're going to, there's a good chance they're just going to be horrible this week, right? But you have to start them. It's so annoying.
Yeah, I would probably consider starting Cameron Brate over Kyle Rudolph, and I say that because Brate did return to the game last week. He finished with 4 catches for 49 yards, which was basically all in the second half because O.J. Howard went out. O.J. Howard, as I mentioned earlier in the show, has been placed on IR. So that's huge. The Panthers, the reason I think that Brate is such a solid streaming option is because the Panthers have somewhat struggled against tight ends. They've allowed 7 touchdowns, including multiple touchdowns to Zach Ertz and Darren Fells. But the reason Thomas Davis, one of their starting linebackers who excels in run and pass coverage, he's out for this game. He got suspended for his hit on Devontae Adams. That's going to further higher the ceiling for Cameron Brate. And being the only tight end on that team, if you combine the targets between him and Howard every week, you're looking at someone who's getting the targets of Rob Gronkowski. So I do believe he should be considered a low end tight end 1 this week. But my question to you, Bobby, what do you do with Ricky Seals-Jones in a matchup against the Giants?
Ignore him. If you play Ricky Seals-Jones, you are asking for 2 receptions for 14 yards. You're asking for it.
Is there a tight end outside the top 6 or 7 that you could say that about, though?
Eric Ebron.
Eric Ebron, who would have thought?
Eric Ebron's safe.
Yeah. What if he's not available, though? Let's pretend you're choosing between Ben Watson, Vernon Davis, Ricky Seals-Jones, and Jesse James.
Vernon Davis, man.
I actually like Vernon Davis this week.
And Jesse James over Ricky Seals-Jones. You're exactly right about Cameron Brate, though. I didn't even think about all that stuff. Man, you nailed it. Here's what Cameron Brate did before O.J. Howard took over for him. Tight end 31, tight end 10, tight end 3, tight end 4, tight end 4, tight end 24. That's 60 yards. He fumbled, no touchdown on 9 targets. And then tight end 11. He's been a top 12 tight end 5 of 7 weeks before O.J. Howard took over. There's a good chance he's a top 12 tight end again here.
Yeah, the knee injury is what concerned me, but being he came back to that game, being he's got the whole week to rest it up, I'm sure they're going to take it easy on him because they had no other tight ends on the depth chart. It was really bad. So again, the matchup here is good. Vernon Davis, I do like. I like him an awful lot. The concern I have, though, is that I wonder if there's an injury that Vernon Davis is hiding and that we don't know about, because from weeks 3 to 11, he finished with 58 or more yards in 7 of 8 games. He was one of the most consistent tight ends in football. And now he's failed to record more than 2 catches or 26 yards over the last 4 games. It's just really weird to me. The Broncos defense have allowed 10 of 14 tight ends to finish as the tight end 13 or better against them. So knowing that, it's tough to shy away from Vernon Davis. I'm just concerned that there's some injury that he's not talking about.
All right, Tex, that's all for today's show. It was a lot of fun. Good luck to everyone in your championship. And remember, we've got our DFS show coming up later this week. If you want to do that, we'll be doing it all through the postseason. Then we'll start talking about drafts and then early sleepers, everything like that. So stay tuned. Subscribe on iTunes if you haven't already. Leave us a rating and review. We really appreciate it. It helps us out a lot. And also thanks to the sponsors of today's show, Lisa Mattress. That's LEESA.com/fantasypros for $100 off your mattress order. And SeatGeek, if you download the SeatGeek app and enter the promo code FANTASYPROS, you'll get $20 off your first SeatGeek purchase. Also, remember, we've got the DraftKings contest going on. You can win $1,000 and a lifetime membership to Fantasy Pros. Just go to fantasypros.com/DraftKings. Entry fee is $1, and half of everyone is going to win some money. For Mike Tagliere, I'm Bobby Sylvester. Thanks for listening, and enjoy your football.